Don't want to forget all our wonderful friends on different time zones, on trains, on planes, with family traveling around the world who will be watching this in replay. But yeah, that song. This is "God Is Real" by Krishna Das. Just as a way to sing us into an exploration today around spirituality. And don't worry, I'm not about to get preachy, but we're gonna get into the some of the more dimensional aspects of this practice in the coming weeks. And so we set this up beginning with our inquiry around death, which I just think is, for me, and I've seen for others, a powerful and universal way to enter into this conversation, exploration of what exists beyond the material. And I'm sure many of us found both beauty and edges in the work of feeling into the nature of death, our own deaths, death of loved ones, practices that I'm sure many of you have done before, but we don't do that often, right? The kind of the death drive, which is like the evolutionary part of us that doesn't want to die. The death drive is really good at having us forget that we're mortal beings. We're very good at forgetting. And so it can be an important thing to return to creating the context, the mortal, impermanent context of our life so that we may use it well, you know? And just to kind of allow us to kind of consolidate and digest some of the reflection on death from the last couple of weeks, a couple quick questions for you that I just want you to either journal on, or if you prefer to just do close-eyed reflections, you're welcome to. Thinking back to the first class we did on death, where we explored all different kinds of ways that human beings talk about the afterlife, about the continuation or the non-continuation of the soul, the way that we relate to the dying and the disposal of bodies, right? All of the stuff that gets maybe sanitized or hidden in our culture, but is dealt with in different ways. As you were exploring death and then going into the meditation practice I gave you last week, reflecting on what if you had 7 days left to live, what came up for you when you were exploring death? What came up for you? Good, bad, ugly, glorious? For some of us, it's challenging to explore death, and we find ways out of it. For some of us, it's painful to revisit the temporariness of our lives because we are tuned to the love that we have that we will lose, whether it's our families, our health, our pets. But I'm also sure that there was beauty in it, right? The realization that you have this incredible, precious moment to use. Yeah. Kiara, what came up for you?
Hi. Loved ones die in the last, I don't know, oh God, 10 or 12 years, just
Mm.
loads of them. I guess it happens when you get to be 70, um, 60, 70. But one of them in particular was a dear friend called Pete, and he had a spiritual teacher who he loved. And when he found out that he had cancer and that there was no cure for it, he told me he felt first he had a cold dread. That was the first thing. And then a minute later, he completely welled up with bliss because he thought, I will see my teacher.
Yeah.
And he actually went through his whole illness in a state of really just sort of love. I mean, I was there, I
Mm.
was looking after him, and I saw it with my own eyes. And when I did that practice that you gave us and other times, I it's it's the same. I just go into this. It's such a heart opening. I've been through all the terror of, oh my God, I won't see my kids again so many times now that I almost, these days I tend to just go straight for the bliss, to be
Mm-hmm.
honest. So that's all I want
That's
to
that's
say.
the surrender and the acceptance, right? I mean, the truth is that there is so much that we want to hold on to in life because there's so much
Mm,
beauty in our lives. And
mm,
part of the acceptance of death is that at some point we will all have to let go of that in some way.
Yeah.
And the
Yeah.
truth is that if we see death as this extraordinary moment of transition that we don't really know what's going to happen, but something's going to happen. And instead going to the space of like, yeah, what if I can be in my heart and my opening? I can't do
Yeah.
anything about the fact that I can't hold on to my children, and but instead I
Yeah.
can just savor what I've had and be thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Opening,
Exactly.
opening, opening, right? Beautiful. Thank you for sharing. Yeah, this is the practicing to die stuff is so cool because we can get better at it. I think that's what's mind blowing is that you can prepare and get better at something that you kind of feel like you've maybe never done before, but maybe you have. My meditation teacher, Dr. John Churchill, when he te does the stuff around death, I just love it. His line is always, "Death, try it, you might like it." And really talks about like this approaching the feeling with this kind of instead of terror, but perhaps with this opening ecstasy. But of course, this is what brings perspective, right? I'm curious if any of you had the experience of how did it impact your perspective on your life? I know for me, it like reorients my priorities. Like whenever I contemplate death, it really helps me to answer some of the questions I'm facing immediately in this moment. Because we're playing this dual game, right? Where we have life, we've got years of life, hopefully, knock on wood, in which we need to be diligent about. You know, we need to pay our taxes, we need to have our job. Like there's a reality to like, oh, the lives that we have to build and create moment by moment through these kinds of actions. But then we also balancing the fact that we don't know when we're going to die. And when we do die, chances are the moments that are really singing to us are those moments of connection with self, you know, whatever you call something outside higher than yourself and with loved ones. This idea that the experience of relationship and the experience of the expression of the soul is often what feels the most real and the most pertinent and important. And so being willing to intentionally balance both the necessary parts of living a life with savoring and capturing and honoring and making space for the moments that make life worth living. Yeah. Cool. Well, that sets us up for where we're going to move in the next 2 weeks, which is into how does lucid dreaming, especially the kind of lucid dreaming that we learn and we practice, how does this relate to the other non-material dimensions of life and to the experience of what we might call spiritual evolution or awakening, or maybe some say enlightenment? And to start exploring the fact that, you know, if you are walking this path, the path of lucidity is not just the path of experiencing our dreams differently. It's fundamentally goes towards and is built into like a practice parallel, the the movement towards an awakened mind and an awakened system. And you know, this stuff can get pretty out there and esoteric. And so to ground it today, next week we're going to go full interdimensional, so seatbelts for then. But today I wanted to get a little bit nerdy with you because I'm a bit of a geek when it comes to this stuff because for me personally, I'm sure some of you can relate to this. The idea of an awakened being or an enlightened being just seems so far away. It seems very mystical. It seems like something supernatural. Like there was the Buddha and Padmasambhava, and there was Jesus, and there were these big historical mythical beings, right? And they could do all these extraordinary things, and that's what an enlightened being looks like. And so for me, I just kind of pushed spirituality and all the awakening stuff. I just went, ugh, you know what? Clearly that's not for me. Because I'm this little meaty munchkin. Like I'm a little meaty munchkin with problems. And I couldn't imagine that there was any way that I could connect to that, right? And some of the most life-changing teachings that I've ever experienced was what I want to share with you today, which built the bridge for me in a way that has forever changed my relationship and my sense of possibility and my sense of accountability for what it means to be a human being in an awakening process, which is what all of you are. But first, let's just like take a big step back because we're probably all coming from different histories and backgrounds and religions and contexts and experiences when it comes to spirituality. So, first of all, let's do a little bit of a journaling, writing out exercise. This is kind of like an excavation process. I want to kind of give us a chance to see what's already in our systems. So, if you grab a little pen or a computer, if that's how you prefer to do this, written would be great if that's possible for you. If you are in motion on a car or whatever, you can just do it as an internal reflection. We bandy these words around, and the truth is, we all have different symbolic meanings attached to it. So, starting with the big one, and there's no right or wrong answer. Please just like write what instinctively comes up for you. What you're trying to do here is just you're just getting curious about how these words or ideas exist and register in your own system. First of all, what is spirituality? If a 5-year-old came up to you and said, "What is spirituality?" How would you explain spirituality? I'm going to have a go at writing these two. For these answers, don't feel like you need to write a long essay. See if you can just write in one sentence the thing that strikes you. 10 more seconds for that one. Then one more layer. What makes something spiritual? If you've ever looked at something or someone and gone, "Oh, they're really spiritual. That's really spiritual." What made it spiritual? And we can have fun here because I know a lot of us have a meta awareness of like, oh, anything can be spiritual. But if we're really honest, I suspect we all have some type of instinctive conditioning that has us grade spirituality. And so have fun with this. You might know there's a deeper answer, but this is again to kind of to excavate the instinctive judgment and meaning making system. Like I might see a man in a suit and a Rolex walking down Wall Street, and I might not make the instinctive judgment that that's a spiritual being, right? It's just because of my conditioning. Doesn't mean I truly believe that or that's real, but I'm like, oh yeah, I definitely pass things out with these kinds of stereotypical instinctive judgments. What makes something spiritual? And there's truth in them too. So it's not to be dismissed. Next one is a yes or a no. And here, like, I really encourage you to feel into this. This is like a true, honest yes or a no, or a maybe, if you're a maybe. Trying to get below the level of the intellect and feel, is it a yes in your body? Like if you say out now, yes, yes, that's what a yes feels like. Yes. Say your name. My name is Mia. My name is Agata. My name is Adam. If you say your name, that's what truth and yes sounds like. If you swap it, if all of you say my name is Mia, no. That's what a no feels like, right? And there's somewhere in between. So feel it like as a body sense more than what you think. Do you believe in awakened or enlightened states of consciousness? Do you believe that awakening, enlightenment is real? This can be a yes, no, maybe. And if you answered a yes or a maybe to that, what makes someone awakened or enlightened? What makes someone an awakened or enlightened being? How would you know if you met one? A fun one for this could be if you heard from someone, this person, like, you've got to meet this teacher. They're truly enlightened. What would you need to see? What would be undeniable proof of enlightenment or awakening for you? Got another yes, no, maybe question coming up. Again, feeling into what feels true versus what you think is true. Do you believe that there have been humans in the past, now, who have reached and stabilized this degree of awakening and enlightenment? Do you believe there are actual human beings who have achieved this or embodied this? Do you believe that it's possible for you to fully embody and stabilize awakening or enlightenment? Do you believe it's possible for you to fully embody and stabilize awakened mind, enlightenment? Why? Why not? Just whatever comes up. If you're a full yes, go under why is there such a strong yes? If you're a not sure, what's the doubt? If you're a no, what's the experience behind the no? Why? Why not? I'd love to hear from, actually, I'd love to hear some voices on this arrange. Is there anyone out there who felt a strong sense of yes, it's possible. Awakening exists, beings have done it, and I can do it. Is there anyone out there who has a strong feeling of yes with that? They'd be willing to jump up and share a little. It's a big one, right? You're like, I don't know if I want to like jump up and be like, yes, I think I can become enlightened, right? Alexander, you're a yes. Stephanie, awesome. Give me like a one sentence. I want to hear like a one sentence description of like, why is it possible? What do you feel?
Um, Sorry, I have a cold. I feel I felt a strong yes. I have a but. I have a yes,
Okay,
but that's I said yes, it's possible, but I think it's more about removal of obscurations rather than a
cool.
created state. And
Yes.
then so when it comes to me personally, I say I have a yes, maybe, because I do believe, yes, it's possible. But what I wrote was but I'm not sure if I hope so. I'm not sure if I will do all needed to remove all my obscurations, or if
Yep.
I'm able to, or
Yep.
have the level of commitment. I do think that it's actually the work is in removing the
Gotcha.
blocks rather
Beautiful.
than create. Okay,
That's
that's all.
beautiful. No, because I love that as a perspective of like, hey, and I agree. And I think what I'm really doing is learning how to consistently access and stabilize the consistent access and experience to my true nature. And that
Yeah.
requires what we're going to talk about today, which is the intelligent, skillful metabolization and reconstruction of the relative self so that those two things are married versus like obscured. Beautiful.
Yes.
Fantastic. Alexander, how you doing?
I'm all right. How are you?
I'm doing great.
Um, yeah, I came down with a full yes. I've been practicing since 2020 in Tibetan Buddhism, and just the levels of changes I've seen in my own thought patterns and behaviors, not anywhere near getting enlightened, may not be in this lifetime, but it's my life is so visibly different from what it was 5 years ago. It's incredible. But even more so, my wife's aunt um, just had a traumatic childhood and spent so much of her life doing everything wrong.
Mhm.
Everything she thought that would make her life better made it worse until back in, I want to say, late 90s. A friend of hers was like, why don't you come to this Buddhist center with me and just see if you like it? And this actually, I mean, it chokes me up. She went and she got into this. She's one of the most amazing people. I mean, I cannot tell you what a fuck up she was for so much of her life. She just exudes peace and beauty. It doesn't matter. Anything can happen, and she's just okay with it. You can ask her to make choices, or you make a choice, and she just doesn't care. Just everything is just rolling forward, and she is just this embodiment of peace and calm. And it's just amazing to have witnessed this transformation. So yeah, I fully believe this.
And isn't that amazing, right? I think what you're speaking to, when we can see, wow, like sincere change is possible. Because I
Yeah.
think this is like, there's a whole question out there. Do you think a person can really change? Like, y- yeah, but it's an inner alchemy, right? It's not a, oh, I took a thing and I had to change my behaviors. Like, it's a transformation of relationship to self and to reality and to world. But when you see that, or you like Alexander, you're saying you've experienced it yourself, you go, well, why would it stop here? Why would this be the limit of that process versus the beginning of that process,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Amazing. Thank
It
you
is
so much.
amazing. Thank you.
Anton, hello.
Hi. For me, I think that, well, it's a resounding yes, and
Mhm.
part of the reason is because I think of the quality of the teachers that I've
Mm,
been blessed to have. And for me, I think it's one aspect of it is um, the quality of teaching itself that is such that even if I perhaps don't or haven't yet fully internalized or digested certain perspectives or insight that's given, I feel like the way that it's been delivered has allowed me to still intuitively sense that there's something there. There's something that I can access and uh, and develop towards. But the other really big component of it for me is their conduct, in
mm,
the sense that I feel like the kinds of teachers I've had have embodied a real ability to be extremely present, extremely attuned,
mm,
and really devoted towards um, the development of my
mm,
own spirituality. And so for those things, I feel like I've seen it embodied and exemplified. So I feel like
mhm.
it feels, and in such a way that it doesn't feel like it's like, how do you say, that as they exemplify it, they're exemplifying themselves as heroes or, super beings, but as like perhaps normal people with extraordinary capacities, like, but constantly reiterating that um, this is not because I'm super special, right?
Yeah,
Right. And that's been very supportive for me.
that's amazing. I think I just want to echo the blessing of if you. It sounds like you've been connected with teachers who demonstrate that as cultivated qualities. Taking these states and making them into like this is the idea of the stabilization where instead of just bouncing up to like moments of great compassion or moments of great insight, really through cultivated work and practice and human work, right? This intelligent human work, being able to bring those states and anchor them into stabilized traits, and then being able to interact with the world from that place. I think that's, I mean, and I know all of you here like have had amazing teachers too. I remember in the applications when people were sharing what the kind of work they've done. I feel the same. It's like the quality of the path and the map and the guides is like, come on. Thanks so much, Anton. Adam. Adam's on the move. Adam's on the groove. Adam's always somewhere cool in the world. He's just showing us his beautiful garden. He's like, I believe because of my beautiful, I believe because of your beautiful garden. Look at that. Wow. Oh, are you gonna unmute Adam? Were you still muted?
Can you hear me now? Yeah. Can you hear me?
Mm-hmm. Gotcha.
Okay, good. Um, uh, I think the question for me, I revised the question. And instead of awakened, I use awakening
Mm-hmm.
because, I couldn't tell whether someone was awakened, but I could certainly tell whether they were on the path toward awakening. And it's the same with me. When you ask whether I can do it, in this lifetime or something. I don't know whether I can get to the end, but I can certainly do better than I am. And it has to do with presence. How present can I remain? It flickers, as we all know. And so I've got a lot of confidence
Mm.
that I can certainly become more present on a more continuous basis. And, I don't think that there's any way really to tell, until you actually die. And in the Buddhist vernacular, you recognize, the mother luminosity, and even that doesn't get you to full enlightenment. I'm guessing. It just gets you off the wheel of uncontrolled.
To the next
You know,
school. Yeah, you're like, oh, what's the next school we're off to? You're like, good, well done. You've graduated from base level samsara. Uh,
yeah. So it's. I think that there's a big. How can I say it? I think the Dharma could be more skillfully taught if people didn't describe like the fully enlightened state, but it was really, it tends to be, when I started and everyone's, one or two, you're not or you
100%.
are,
It's is or
you
it isn't.
know,
Like, yeah, yeah.
but it's a spectrum, and,
Brilliant.
we're all on the spectrum and we're all, doing it
100%.
at our own pace, and we'll all get there eventually,
I love it. And this is, I mean, that's
or
why I
we
love
won't.
the path of the Bodhisattva for me is it's why it's the path I've dedicated myself to, Bodhisattva awakening, being this idea of like, well, what does it mean to be aligning ourselves with the natural evolution of what our consciousness is? Not a forced process, not a attempt to necessarily escape, but in fact, like you're saying, like understanding and working skillfully with the path of like the unfolding being that is
Yeah.
naturally coming through us because we are naturally wired for these kinds of spiritual insights and practices. So I my whole next spiel is built around that, Adam. So I'm so thank you for the best little segue. Thanks. And Theo, for you jumping in last here, I can't pin you because you're just a disembodied voice, but oh, there we go.
Sorry. Well, thank you. I'm happy that you actually asked me after Adam. I must say I feel a little shaky answering this question, but definitely more stable. A couple of weeks ago, I called Adam, who's a very close friend of mine, and I mean, maybe you could say I was having a meltdown. I was discouraged about, I don't think I'm lucid dreaming yet, but maybe I am, and I just have the wrong definition. But it was a turn the page or a turn the chapter moment because my meltdown was, oh, I'll never get there.
Mm.
And yet Adam said, Theo, you are constantly practicing. You own so many bodhisattva qualities, bodhicitta qualities. You if you look at this as a yes and see yourself on the path and know that it's almost like a work in progress, or it's a
Mhm.
practice in progress that has been deepening over all these years. And just because you haven't done one thing doesn't mean that the benefit of all the other choices, practices, dedication to the path that I'm on won't have a benefit and
Yes.
and support me. So I'm a yes and the and is, and I have a variation of the theme in itself that allows me to feel safe and flourish.
Beautiful. And I think, Theo, what you're sharing is so important because with lucid dreaming, there can be this confusion sometimes when we train in a practice like this because there's kind of a very specific measurable outcome with lucid dreaming that
Mhm.
you're like you can get attached to and track, which is like, did I have lucidity in the dream? Right.
Mhm.
Versus like if you're doing meditation, unless you're using a Muse headband to like quantify your brain waves and things, we generally are just in for the process of it. But what's interesting is that getting lucid in your dreams, while there is a beautiful correlation to these practices. I know many people who get lucid in their dreams who are not waking up in their lives. And I know many people who are incredibly embodied in the path who don't lucid dream. And so what I would say is that like just like with any of these tantric practices, because dream yoga and lucid dreaming is a tantric practice, they are not in and of themselves a guarantee or a marker either way. They are a pathway that can massively accelerate and open us. But some people have natural predispositions, so they'll get lucid quickly. Others have to work to create the conditions for that specific practice. But let's say I threw you into like Tummo, which is another kind of Vajrayana Tantra practice, right? You might take to Tummo like this, whereas some people, it takes people forever to get Tummo, right? So I just think what Adam said is brilliant for all of us. Like respect and love the quality of like whatever you're working with in your system, and trust, like as long as you are showing up, learning, growing, open and engaging with it, you're 100% doing it right. And then whether and how lucidity pops and blossoms can be a celebrated part of the journey, but isn't the indicator in and of itself, and never ever worth having a meltdown over, I promise you. Because
Thank
if it
you.
was you, how many meltdowns I would have had about having dry spells by this point, I would have packed it all in and thrown it away.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Amazing. Thank you. Okay, Pamela, really quickly, then we need to move on. But I want to hear you. I haven't said hi to you for ages. How you doing?
Hi. I want to add a piece to the puzzle. My answer is
Sure.
yes. And I feel like that being able to stay with the emotions in the process of grief and dying is an entree into that world. I'm not dissing anything anybody else says. I totally support all the practice. I just think there is something about being able to sit with all of that while you're dealing with loss. And that was an experience for me where I got a taste.
Mm,
And for me, that's a piece of the puzzle.
yeah, I agree. For you, when you were sitting with that, what did it help you to kind of, what clicked for you? What opened for you during that process?
Veils come down during death and dying. I had dealt with losses, and my father died, then my mother got ALS, and I dealt with all of that. So it was an extensive 18-month of dealing with losses.
Mhm.
And it's like being able to stay with the grief, stayed with the heart, stayed open. And it's like you could stay more in that unveiled or less veiled experience
Absolutely.
with
Mm.
spirit, with whatever you want to call that, that opens during those kinds of times.
Yeah, I mean, this is the portal of why working with something, whether it's pain or death, grief, these are things that are they immediately challenge the kind of stuck materialist perspective we can get into,
Mhm.
and everything can become a little more like, whoa. And if you're right, if you stay with it, you can be in that experience of it versus some people, obviously, we can shut down to protect ourselves from it and everything just
Sure.
gets more solid. So I love what
Yeah.
you're saying about staying with the experience, the grief, the discomfort, the pain. Beautiful. Thank you for adding that piece. Amazing. All right, cool. So then we're all kind of, and just for anyone out there who was kind of a no or maybe, I just want to say that like that's where I was. I mean, I used to laugh so hard because my husband is such a he's such a spiritual warrior. You know, he really believes not just in the awakening, but the awakening of all humanity now. You know, like he really holds a context and a belief that is like, it's so optimistic and powerful that my brain is like, that's too much. I don't know. It took me so, I can't subscribe. I'm like, but what about all this and this and this? My brain, you know. And so it took me probably say the last 4 or 5 years of practice have been when this really opened up for me and helped to marry my rational brain, which has questions like, well, okay, but if we have this innate qualities and but like, why then is the world so fucked up? Like, why are we so awful to each other? And why, if there was enlightened beings, why, like, all the kind of doubts, the questions, the buts, the ands, all of this stuff, right? And so we're going to explore this today. We're going to get a little geeky and a little nerdy, and I hope you can give me permission to just go there today, because one of the things that's most powerful is having the context of a map. Talk about whether it's the map of having seen people in different stages of awakening, right? Wow, like Adam was saying, maybe with all the teachers, and I know Adam's worked with a lot of different teachers over the years, it not being a binary, you are or you aren't, but wow, that person is definitely further down the path in their embodiment of these qualities, right? So having teachers who embody that, or whether it's seeing how they reverse engineer the map of how we get there. And so we are going to go into a journey around what I call ordinary awakening. And this is the question we're going to explore, which is like, what if awakening is a natural part of human development? What if we're evolving into alignment? What if just like a child goes from not knowing it has a body, to figuring out its coordination, to getting multiple perspectives, like into its identity, into full. What if development doesn't stop at 18? Crazy idea, right? Like, what if we actually don't stop developing just because we've stopped our physical material development? What if individually and collectively there is a much greater story of development that we're on? And what if it's normal and natural and ordinary? So one of the ways I like, I love thinking about this is using kind of a synthesis. We're going to go through a couple different models of amazing thinkers who have taken on this question and mapped it out, right? Incredible ways of doing this. And we're going to synthesize the key points of those, my favorite models today. But one of the super helpful frames to start with is this idea of like, well, thinking about our experience as a being through these different models, right? So this idea that we have like a pre-personal stage of development. And pre-personal is really when you're a baby, you're pre-verbal. This is like 0 to sort of, depends on the model, but like 0 to 3, 0 to 5. This is when you are a little being, just like soaking everything up. You're learning your attachment system and your belief system and your nerve. It's just a whole you're wiring, right? And working with the pre-personal is when we do what Ken Wilber would call cleaning up. So cleaning up is when we have to go back and we're like, you know what? My parents didn't give me the care and the consistent attunement I needed. So I have this insecure attachment system. I'm going to go back and using whatever path or methodology, I'm going to rewire my attachment system into security, right? Or belief systems or whatever it is. So we can do cleaning up work to kind of stabilize our pre-personal experiences. If our pre-personal experiences have been super, super challenging, it makes our life continuously challenging, right? So yeah, personal, this is now kind of like, we can think of it as our real sense of conscious self. And if you're working on your personal, this is where you're doing your coaching, you're learning relationship skills, you're becoming efficacious, you're like building great habits. And this is the growing up. This is taking responsibility, being accountable, living an impact, right? And then what happens, of course, we go into the waking up. This is the transpersonal. This is where instead of kind of just fortifying the personal, which is, let's say, like the Tony Robbins experiences or anything which Alex Hormozy, anything which is around like it's personal development around strengthening and expressing the self. Transpersonal is when we start to go into these practices and the experiences, we go, whoa, I'm not just a self. I'm not this independent, separate thing. I'm actually greater and I'm interconnected. We start to have these transpersonal experiences where we realize our sense of consciousness and our awareness, it goes far beyond the personal constructed self. And you might have had these experiences through meditation, through dreaming, through psychedelics, through whatever practices, through breath work, through dancing, making love. We have these transpersonal experiences. And the cool thing is like all of these levels, now that we're grown up, right? They're not some linear thing now. Like we can use each level skillfully to support how we do this. So for instance, transpersonal, having a big transpersonal experience can help us to see, wow, the self is actually a constructed temporary thing. Therefore, it's flexible, it's changeable. So therefore I can do the work on it. Or I can go back to my pre-personal. I feel safe enough because I understand I'm this infinite, indestructible being. It's safe to go back and from this place of infinite unconditional love to hold the inner child that didn't get what it wanted. And so we can use and move through these states to beautifully clean up, grow up, wake up, right? Show up, and as Dr. John says, fuck up as well, make up mistakes, it's fine. And so it's this cool thing to go, wow. I often ask myself when I'm working with something in my life, is this a pre-personal thing? Is this like safety, love, a sense of worthiness? Is this like a fundamental thing? Is this a personal issue? Is it like efficaciousness, habits? Is it a transpersonal thing? A connection to God, needing more trust? So that's like a basic high level of how we can go into this. And then you'll see, gosh, just for example, here's a whole bunch of models, whether it's Maslow's hierarchy, we're going to look at spiral dynamics soon. Why I want to bring this up is you see here, they've kind of pulled together a bunch of models. Pretty much every model of development here with this green line reaches a point where it moves from the pre-personal and the personal, which you can see here, like safety, belonging, self-esteem, self-actualization, or, impulsive, self-protective, conformist, blah, 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 moves up and crosses this line into the transpersonal, becoming construct aware, ego aware, transpersonal, transcendent, unity, metamind, overmind, supermind. Even Maslow's hierarchy of needs, there was another piece that's often not talked about. He added it later, which was self-transcendence. After self-actualization, personal, the full embodiment of impact of self. The next was self-transcendence, the transpersonal. So you just want to show this that like most of these models have started to scaffold up into these awakened transpersonal states of being. So I'm going to look at the two favorite ones that I think are fantastic. And we'll do a little whirlwind tour through them because it's worth it. As I go through the spiral dynamics here, we'll go through kind of very quickly each stage. I want you to see if you can remember when in your life you were at each stage. You don't have to read the tiny font. I know it's tiny. I just want to show you this is the spiral. It's the idea of the movement of the growth. I'll go through each, but see if you can hear where in your personal space did you experience this as a child, as a young person, as an adult? And also, this model works personally, but it also works at a societal level. What kind of qualities does the society you live in embody? Just listen for it. So Clare Graves, he started this. He was the one who kind of originally did this. Then Don Beck was his kind of protege who kind of built on it. And the spiral dynamics categories kind of work like this. It starts with beige, which is the instinctive survival self, right? So from like a personal perspective, this is when you're a little baby, 0 to 18 months. This is hundreds of thousands of years ago since the beginning of human mammalian existence. And this here is just survival focus, food, shelter, reproduction, instinctive, pre-social. And so for most of us, this is going to be when we were babies, right? So that kind of just instinctive self. Evolving up into the magical animistic self, the purple. This is like the tribal order. And they alternate individual, collective focus. So when you're beige, all you're thinking about is yourself. The baby needs food. It cries, right? And from a societal perspective, I need resources, I take it. The purple goes more into like a tribal order. And this is where children 1 to 3, they say this is 50,000 years ago. And this is where there's like magical thinking, safety in groups, ritualism, traditions, beginning to form this idea of customs and guided behavior. And really like, the idea of magic here being that there was a deep belief that you could do something here and it would make something else happen there, right? And this has a power to it. And so by the way, each of these things, we don't get rid of them. The idea is as we develop, we transcend and include them. We want to have a strong purple in our life. We need to have a strong sense of being able to work in the field. That then evolves into red, impulsive, egocentric. This is what they call the early mythic. Again, individualized. And this is here the feudal and exploitative empire. This is the power-driven, I take what I want, domination, might takes right kind of approach to things. And, you look back into early societies that are like driven by red. And we have some pretty strong splashes of red still in our world today. But it's this sense of like a very intense tribal and not tribal, very intense kind of power-driven sense. Everything's aligned with, which then evolved into blue. And this is where we start to come into like what we have in our world today. And this is where I love, you start to think about for yourself. I remember being a child and being very like individually driven, wanting what I wanted. And there's usually a moment in your life, whatever age, where you start to take on a set of morals and principles and rules. And blue is this kind of response to the kind of individual aggressive red. And it's around having this idea of like moral organization. So this is nation states, organized religion, authoritarian. It's purposeful. It's later mythic. So it goes from being kind of like intense, aggressive, violent gods to the Abrahamic God, right? This is like 5,000 years ago. Order, structure, rules, obedience to authority, absolute truths, morality, religion, discipline, duty. And I think for myself, I was like, wow, yeah, I went through a really strong blue phase when I was like 16. I was super anti-drugs, super anti-drinking. I had like, I thought I knew everything. I could divide the world up into black and white, wrong and good. I had a really strong sense of like, this is it. I simplified everything through that order making. And we all move through these. And you can look like there's a lot of blue in different parts of America where it's easier to just draw a box and say, this is right, this is wrong, good guys, bad guys. Follow it absolutely, right? That kind of evolves into orange. Orange is capitalist kind of democracy. This is where it's all about the self. It's all about the achiever. This is all about rational, scientific, success, strategic, competitive. This is the demigod realm of samsara. This is Wall Street. This is VCs. This is the world of like efficaciousness. And remember, each of these have good and challenging qualities. None of these are bad. They're just levels of development that are exploring and expressing qualities. And we try to integrate them all because we want some blue. It's important to have a sense of morality, right? But we don't want to be so blue that we demonize everybody. Same with orange. We want to have efficaciousness. We need to have a part of us that's able to be effective and, create things and make progress. But if we're just orange, what happens, right? We burn the world. We sell, make everything plastic, right? We create monetary systems that drive people into poverty and despair. So out of orange evolves green. Green is more like the social democracy. This is egalitarian, communitarian. And what we're often seeing in America is a clash between green and orange blue, right? This kind of hybrid green, orange, blue. That's the kind of Democrat-Republican clash of these different kind of perspectives. And green evolved in reaction to these, and it cares about appreciating diversity, equality. It makes everything flat. It flattens hierarchy. It's a care for the environment. It's pluralism. The challenge with green is that it can make everything relative, right? So then it destroys any sense of hierarchy or any sense of success. And so green in its imbalance can be really challenging and can be counterproductive too. And so, a kind of unhealthily expressed green that hasn't integrated its blue and hasn't integrated its orange can kind of express as an extreme liberalism, which we get these big clashes, right? But I think about for myself, I'm like, yeah, orange, man, when I went to law school, I was pure orange. Are you kidding me? I was like, boom, boom. It was all about like beating people, succeeding, getting the A, making this, getting the jobs. It was all orange. And then I evolved out of that. I was like, oh, and I became a high school teacher. I went full green. I was like, what was I doing? I remember standing in these courtrooms with these, I was a criminal defense lawyer and a criminal prosecutor, kind of do both, trying to make these cases about people being good or bad or this or that and going, this is all constructed, and these people are only here because of the social conditions that they were born out of. And it activated the green in me. I'm sure you've had a moment like that too, like you've had that awakening. So all of those levels, all the way from beige up to green, are what we call the personal subsistent levels. They're like the tier 1 of human development. And that's where 99% of people are, right? Like in this level of development where they have strong opinions and perspectives of the world, and they might not have integrated all those layers. And so what happens is they're clashing with each other. Green is trying to take down orange and blue. Blue is horrified by green, right? Like they're allergic to each other if they haven't integrated each aspect, which most of us haven't. So then in this amazing model, they say, okay, there's a radical phase shift. Once you've sat with green for a while, and let's say you've managed to integrate the other layers, you move from this kind of personal level up into what they call the transpersonal being level. And the really key thing here, you'll see with all of the models, the big shift happens here is when you go, you know what? I can see that these experiences and these expressions and the opinions I can see the developmental force behind them. I can see the constructed nature, the conditioned nature of this. And I can see the flexibility in it. Like, whoa, you're no longer like tied into this one perspective as being right. So what happens is it goes into what they call the integral self. And they say this has only been like 50 years. I don't, again, these are models where people are making hypotheses. They're saying this really emerged 50 years ago in a kind of mainstream way, but I suspect these have been around for forever. And this is a world-centric point of view. Systems thinking, flexibility, accepting complexity, non-attachment to ideology, integrating multiple perspectives, being more of a flow with life. Yellow can hold green, orange, blue, purple, can hold these perspectives, understand them, understand their beauty, understand their challenges, and work more in a more flexible, integrated way, right? Which then goes out, this but still in an individual way. And I'd say like a lot of people, like I'd say in this community and the communities we're connected to are in this kind of yellow stage. We're entering this kind of integral self. It's a very individual thing. It's like working first on how we get our own internal worlds in order, our spiritual development paths. We're figuring it all out. That evolves into turquoise, which is the collective expression of this. And this is where we start to get those awakened qualities. Unity consciousness, global humanity focused, ecological awareness, really tapped into the being of the planet and the health of the planet, spiritual integration, compassion, interconnectedness, holistic living. And so turquoise in the spiral dynamics world is really where you start to see, well, this is the expression, the stabilized expression of some of these awakened states. There's another phase called coral, which is speculative at the moment. And this one, I'd say, goes into even more of what we call the awakened states, but it's speculative. There's not enough people who are sustainably in this phase to really talk about it yet. But pretty much from a spiral dynamics perspective, enlightenment, quote unquote enlightenment, is framed more like it's here a post-egoic, world-centric way of being where unity and compassion guide action. I think it's really beautiful. And seeing that, wow, if you look at this, you look at each of these phases, you feel into when you were in that state of magic as a child or a young person, moving into like these other stages of like, no, you knew it was right or wrong. You probably, when you're younger and you kind of take up an identity. I'm a this, I'm a this, and I know exactly what's cool and what's not cool, right? That feeling of the blue into the achiever, into the green, and feeling our way up now into this like, the natural evolution of this. Pamela, there are no resources that include coral. So that's the thing. Coral is speculative. So you can kind of jump online and read different people's interpret like ideas of coral, but there isn't a aligned kind of Claire Graves, Don Beck version of that. That's why I kind of didn't put it in, because it's a lot more speculative. What I would say is like, you should sit down and think about what coral would be. Like, what would be the next evolution? Like, coral is something that's being co-created right now. So the spiral dynamics one is kind of like quite a beautiful one to kind of go to. My favorite is actually the Terry O'Fallon stages model. And you can just see here, it's a really, just because it's like a very, I don't know, for some reason it's very similar, but it just maps it out for me. You can see here at the concrete level of development, impulsive, egocentric, rule-oriented, conformist, moving into expert, achiever, pluralist, strategist, the subtle realms, up into the meta-aware, construct-aware, transpersonal, universal, illumined. So very similar to what we're looking at here in terms of the different stages. The first tier here goes up to the 4. And then it has this shift into what we call construct-aware. And this is a really awesome delineation that I think is made, and something that we can reflect on really in a concrete way, which is that the transition from this kind of personal subsistence level where we're just kind of like figuring ourselves out and taking on opinions and taking on perspectives and clashing with others, is to move into that construct aware nature, which is where you start to realize like, wow, who I am, these opinions that I'm fighting for. No, this is constructed. This is essentially the Buddhist insight of emptiness, right? Openness. What if things aren't as concrete and as real as I seem to take them to be? What if there is actually an incredible amount of flexibility and conditioning involved with this stuff? And you'll know someone is construct aware because they can usually take feedback. They're the kind of people who can work on themselves because they understand their self is flexible. It's very hard to do any kind of spiritual or personal development work if you think the self is real, right? Because anytime it's like it's real and I'll defend it to the end, right? If you go, gosh, yeah, a lot of who I am is probably just habit that I've picked up over time. Maybe some of those habits aren't so great. I'm willing to work on that. We have this incredible flexibility. But what's interesting is that you can be construct aware, but if you don't have the compassion and the kind of bodhicitta online, you can fall into nihilism, right? So there's a lot of I'd say, I saw this when I was at university all the time. A lot of academics who are construct aware, they're aware wow, if I look at enough people and places and history and whatever, you realize very quickly that things are largely constructed, but they have no unifying experience of what sits behind the construction. And so they fall into nihilism. Well, there's nothing there. Empty as in nothingness. What's the point? If it's all made up, who cares? And they're missing the qualities needed to make that kind of leap into those states because they don't have the connective feeling. They don't have the compassion and the heart online yet. And so I noticed for myself, for any clients I'm working with, and for yourself, if you ever notice that when you're working with the sense of wow, the constructed nature of the world, or wow, seeing the daytime as dreamlike, and you feel any sense of emptiness or nihilism, connect to your heart. You have to go back into feeling the interconnected experience of the awareness that sits behind everything. Not nothing, but everything, right? Open, as in completely flexible, but full of life, not nihilistically empty. So moving through the construct awareness, then going into these transpersonal stages. Listen to how this describes spacious awareness, capacity to hold paradox, subtle experiences of oneness, non-dual awareness stabilizes, compassion becomes a natural expression, deep equanimity, effortless surrender, self-other distinction softens into transparent flow. What does that sound like? This is very familiar to the descriptions we hear of, I'd say, states of awakening, of the enlightened beings that we hear. So within the Terry O'Fallon model, awakening appears as the natural unfolding of cognition, perspective taking, and compassion, not a bolt of lightning. And what's super important about all of these models is just to reinforce this idea of what we might have been taught, like Adam was saying, is an on-off switch, is a path. Just like when you're lucid in a dream, you can be pre-lucid, you can be aware you're in a dream, but not be lucid enough to kind of do anything about it, all the way to hyper-lucid. Why wouldn't it be the same in waking state? Awakening would be a spectrum and a path. And the cool thing is, if we understand, if we've got this map, what's really cool is we can look backwards and see where we've come. You can look around you and go, wow, that country is really grounded in blue. That's a very blue country. They're at kind of a blue developmental level. Wow, I can see that. They're at a kind of a green developmental level. And you can start to understand, wow, these are just natural parts of development we've already been through. And we're going further. We're not going to stop. It's not like development just ends. It's a natural and inevitable pathway. There's a super, super, super cool woman I'm going to introduce you to called Dr. Lisa Miller. She talks about this idea of ordinary states of awakening. What if we thought about awakening as being ordinary, right? Kind of like this moves through the stages here: survival, tribal, power, order, achievement, community, integration, awakening. What if this is just a natural path that all of us are on? And it's not a supernatural thing. It doesn't even necessarily require the intense, extraordinary effort that we're also thinking we have to do. But what if it's a natural unfolding? So Dr. Lisa Miller is awesome. She does real research into states of awakening. And her main premise is that humans are biologically wired for spiritual experience. And I pulled a few of my favorite quotes from her book. Her book is The Awakened Brain by Dr. Lisa Miller. I mean, she does a lot of sort of cognitive neuroscience research on this, plus just looking across different other different papers. It's a great book. She has some amazing podcasts too. One of her quotes: every single human being is born a spiritual being. The awakened brain is our natural birthright. It's a capacity of perception through which we are an open system. But then how do we build it? That's by choice, that's by practice. This is perhaps the biggest revelation of the awakened brain, that it's in our innate nature to build a better world. That what's good for everyone is also what's best for each of us. This is what she found from all of the research she was doing. When we engage our awakened awareness, the hard things in our lives don't go away, but we have the capacity to perceive our sorrow and struggle in a new way. Knit into the fabric of life, there is a felt knowledge that we are never really alone. Her work is super cool because it helps to just anchor in a kind of really evidential way that states of awakening and the kind of natural pull we have to these higher states of development is just built into us. And there's nothing sort of supernatural about the development into essentially awakened states of being. And so from a practical perspective, then we go, okay, cool. So then, like, if that's true, can we demystify this idea of awakening or enlightenment? Can we say, well, can we break it down to traits? So what are the common denominators across religious traditions, stages of development? Like, what are the actual character traits of awakening? So construct awareness, right? We talked about this. Understanding that self, culture, ideas are constructed and flexible. Expanded awareness, that our awareness shifts beyond like the little self into world-centric, interconnected systems thinking. This is super important. Perspective holding. So comfortable with paradox and the ability to integrate multiple viewpoints. This is super important. How many perspectives can you hold, understand, feel, even if they're contradictory, right? Being able to hold the discomfort of all the different experiences. Compassion and care, right? Natural empathy, concern for all beings and ecosystems, equanimity and surrender, emotional steadiness and acceptance of impermanence, integration. So everyday life and spiritual insight becomes seamless. That one is super important. I feel like historically, a lot of spiritual teachers have failed to integrate their amazing capacity for insight into their behavior and their conduct in the world. Integration. Non-attachment, so freedom from rigid beliefs, identities, outcomes, authenticity and expression, authentic, creative, aligned self-expression. So these are cool. I mean, listen, I'm sure there's like, we could come up with 15 more, but I was like, I'm going to narrow it down for us because we're going to work with these. And so then the question is like, okay, cool, how do we cultivate this, right? If these are characteristics of a person, and these are traits that we can work with, how do we cultivate them? So psychological integration, cleaning up. Practices that expand awareness, whether that's meditation or psychedelic therapy or lucid dreaming, practices that help you to move your experience beyond the concrete self. Training and perspective taking. I mean, go do like one of those, what's the authentic relating communication courses, right? Or like there are amazing different courses in communication, which so much of communication is about learning how to take perspectives. Super cool. Cultivating compassion. Stabilizing equanimity, learning to live integration, luciding attachment, authentic expression. So each of these qualities here, we can kind of go into this investigation of like, okay, cool. If I wanted to cultivate more compassion and care, if I wanted to like strengthen and stabilize that as a trait, what would I do? And so as this relates to lucid dreaming, this is why, again, you're like, oh, wow, doing the dream practices can be so powerful for every single level here. Shadow work in the dream, right? Doing the psychological integration by meeting and loving and embracing aspects of your own psyche. Stepping into the dream world, lucidly or non-lucidly, as long as it's with like intention, you're watching it, teaches you you're so much more than just the waking state being. Perspective taking, are you kidding me? Going into a dream, into a lucid dream, and realizing that all the other expressions of consciousness there are you, and being forced to in real time relate to and accept and be with them from a place of oneness and compassion. Same with the compassion, stabilizing equanimity, those like our automatic compassion response. How can we learn to be truly like hearts online in the face of fear and feeling disgusted or whatever kind of challenging emotion we're having, developing equanimity by powering ourselves up with enough bodhicitta to really face it with love. Integration. How do you integrate this into your life with lucid dreaming? I feel like because your conscious mind is there during the practice, you tend to integrate whatever experience you're having in your dream in real time. The brain records it like a waking state experience. So it gets integrated immediately. The seeing is the doing. Loosening attachment. Yeah, I mean, you only have to die enough times in a dream or see your dream self disappear to start to have some loosening of attachment, especially loosening attachment to the illusion of the projected illusion of I guess our experience in the dream and waking state. Authentic expression, I think, leads from all of these. So to remember that, this is what I say, that lucid dreaming is linked intimately to awakening. When we use lucid dreaming in a dream yoga context, because many people don't, but when you work with lucid dreaming as a path, it really offers, to like cultivate and strengthen all of these traits of awakening. So the question for you this week is really, what do you want to strengthen? If we take this perspective that we are all bodhisattvas, we are all awakening beings, whatever stage of development and path we're on, but we are all moving naturally and throughout just the organic momentum of our own species towards these states of awakening, checking in with yourself, like which of these do you feel you are strengthening? It's not very helpful. There you go. I know for myself, for instance, when I'm getting kind of stressed out about something, like recently I've been doing kind of a big transition in my life, I've had to work with the construct awareness, because when my sense of self gets challenged by a transition, I need to be able to see how that self is actually just a constructed set of beliefs. And then I work skillfully with it. Like, I'm wanting to become a mother, but I've created no space in my life to be a mother, right? I am so busy. It's no wonder I'm not getting pregnant. I'm just like, boom, boom, boom. But to step back from all the work that I do to create enough space has been really challenging to my sense of self because of the beliefs and the personality that I've built, right? So I have to go back into that sense of like, oh, it's just constructed. And let me gently, skillfully reconstruct that so I can actually bring into my life what it is that is a priority to me. So I can go back to construct awareness to help with those kinds of processes. Expanded awareness will help with that. I mean, if you're feeling disconnected, going into compassion and care. But I just love for you to choose one of these traits that you want to work with this week that you would like to strengthen. So just start by picking one and actually chuck it in the chat. I'd love to hear which of these traits do you want to work on to strengthen. It could be one that's already strong. It doesn't have to be a weakness, but one that you're like, yeah, I really want to work with this week. Jill, non-attachment, compassion, and care. Excellent. It's funny because those two actually are really beautifully, they work together, because to be both deeply compassionate and caring for people while working on non-attachment requires an incredible balance. Equanimity and surrender. Great, Pamela. Ricardo, expanded awareness. Yes. Alexander, integration. Awesome. Integration, yes. Perfect. David, you want to rethink yourself as someone creative and expressive. Excellent. So then going into like the story that you carry that you're not, right? Like there's some like software line, some code in your system going, I'm not particularly creative. I'm not a creative person. And you're like, when was that programmed? Right? Like, fantastic. All right. So whatever you choose, once you've picked your trait, I want you to think of at least one way. You can start with one way, you can add to it, but at least one way of how you're going to work with this. Because there are, depending on what you're doing, right, there are different ways to do this. So for instance, let's say if I wanted to work with expanded awareness, I would ask myself, okay, how can I create moments or experiences, whether it's through practice or reflection, that help me to connect with my greater sense of awareness. That might be going for a silent walk in nature. And in that walk, not getting in my head, but instead really feeling out into and connecting out into the wider world and sensing like, whoa, I'm part of this whole amazing planet that's peopling and existing. I'm like, I'm a part of that interconnected experience. Or if you were someone who works with psychedelic therapy, like having an experience, like working with psychedelics in that intentional way to expand the awareness beyond the self. If I'm working with construct awareness, you could do anything from journaling, like really journaling out all your thoughts and beliefs and being able to like, I tell you what, if you write down all your thoughts and you look at them on a piece of paper, you're like, wow, that's interesting. You know, you can start to see the patterns, but also that it's kind of like a repeated loop, right? So you could do that. You could do belief work, go back to the belief breakthrough stuff that we did, use the ChatGPT, go through and like deconstruct the conditioned thinking loops. But choosing one thing, what is one thing you're going to do to work with this? Are you going to change your dream plan? Is there something you could do with when you're working with your dreams this week to include this? If it's compassion and care, how can you do that in action this week, right? Might be a combination of I'm going to do loving kindness meditation every day, and then I'm going to make a commitment every single day to really go out of my way to do something kind for somebody. Tiny little commitments like that. But this is like, how do we cultivate and stabilize these strengths? Is we have to practice them. It's like what she said, right? It's here. Every single human being is born a spiritual being. The awakened brain is our natural birthright. It's a capacity of perception through which we are an open system. But then how do we build it? That's by choice. That's by practice. So choosing to practice these traits. And the cool thing about all this as well is that I've noticed that there's a pretty strong correlation between our true, sincere feeling that we are on a path of awakening, not as some crazy out there woo-woo thing that you, oh my God, I want someone like tells me they're enlightened and they make a post on Facebook that they've reached enlightenment. Not that. Like natural, all of us, just like we evolved from being, you know, through all these different dimensions of experience and perspective taking. Now we are moving into these transpersonal experiences. We're a little bit wobbly right now, right? We have I've got that feeling of oneness, and then we snap back into hating our mother-in-law, whatever it is. But learning how to stabilize them. You are skillful enough now. You are at that stage where you've got the tools, but you have to make the decision of, like these are the traits. I'm going to stabilize those by practicing them. There's a strong correlation between that and lucidity in the dream, right? It's just lucidity. It's just lucidity. And just like I had a conversation with someone this week who was like, lucid dreaming isn't real. They're like, that's made up. It's completely made up. They really believe lucid dreaming was completely untrue. And when I showed them the scientific papers, like they had to go sit quietly by themselves in the corner and readjust their reality for a moment. But for them, they were never going to lucid dream because they just didn't even believe it was real. To someone else I spoke to who was like, lucid dreaming, I think it's real. Like, you need to have a special kind of brain to do it. I don't have that kind of capacity, right? They had the belief like that. Versus someone who goes, lucid dreaming is real, and I think I have the capacity. Versus someone who goes, I think lucid dreaming is real, I think I have the capacity, and I have the map. I know how to, if I really wanted to, I know how I could cultivate this. You've been practicing that with your lucid dreaming. You've been using the tools and tweaking, but it's the same thing for the stabilization of awareness and waking state. And so these are truly twins. These practices are twins. And so as you are cultivating whatever trait it is that you want to work with this week, whether it's compassion or construct awareness, that is also a lucid dreaming practice, which is why it gets really, really interesting. All right, that was a lot. That was great. Who has shares, questions, anything they want to Questions probably the best thing because I don't know. We only have like 5 or 7 minutes left. Any questions I can support with? Tamlin, hello.
Hello.
Hi.
Can you hear me all right?
Yes, I got you.
Good, good. Hi. Um, I have a question about practice more than about the content
Sure,
today.
sure.
Um, so I had a couple of dreams where I had some lucidity and was able to, and I was so excited about it. Yeah, exactly, diddle dance. I called out my Sankalpa, and both times, and now it's happened 3 times with the same Sankalpa, that the person that I was asking for my teenage self was completely unresponsive to me.
Mm-hmm.
And I tried different things each time. And last night, I feel like I had more success because before it was like, basically, it's what to do when it's unresponsive. I
Yes.
think more about the part of me that I've called forward from what happened last night was I've called that part of me forward. Instead of asking if it was that part of me, I just started engaging with them because I could see that it was, because it looked like teenage me.
Sure.
Saying kind words, saying, kind words, love, but still no response. So I just went for the hug and it was emotional but it didn't feel complete.
Yeah.
So I suppose my question is around, is it a common thing that a dream character that you call forward is just kind of unresponsive, kind of not even looking at me? And yeah, what do you
Mm-hmm.
Sankalpa or yeah.
Well, first of all, I mean, just celebrating the streak. Like I could feel how you've been working with this. And I apologize. I have read the email. I hate it. So I was like, ah! I'd like to take my time to reply to things. So if I'm in a rush, but this is even better. So because you're having this like consistent thread of like working with this through the dream, you're learning so much about yourself because you're like, huh, I do this, but then this happened, I check, it didn't answer. So first of all, celebrating just that you're having the lucidity to do that, because that's like, thank you, dreaming mind. Yes, let's go. With this stuff, my general rule is like it can be hard to control what comes up, and we're not necessarily trying to. And so if you find you have an unresponsive dream figure, you summon something and it doesn't quite meet your expectation, which happens all the time. It could be unresponsive, it could look completely weird or different, it could give you a nonsense answer. You will have these experiences will happen, it's super normal. My rule of thumb is like, okay, the dreaming mind tends to bring me and you and everyone whatever it is that's like the level 1. And so I just treat everything with exactly what you did last night. I go in for the integration. If I'm seeing this, like I'm like, it's not really responding. I'm not going to dismiss it. I'm just going to go, you know what, there's something, I'm just going to love this. I'm going to integrate it fully. And then I'm going to do it again, like you said. And then if let's say now you've hugged your teenage self, what might be interesting is to then go, is there a even more specific aspect of that I could work with? So for instance, you might, if there's something like, oh, well, I'll say for myself, like if I was working with my teenage self today, because right now I've been working on this idea of like having to earn love, I would summon like I think about the teenage self that was working so hard for her parents' approval. So I'd probably summon something like, you know, the need, like my young need for approval. I would summon something like that. Young need for approval, come here. I would look for the quality that I want to work with and then see if specificity brings up something more interactive, right? So sometimes by just making an adjustment in how clear we feel about what we're working with can help the dream to bring us something more interactive. But it also just might be that like you just need to hug a bunch of unresponsive figures first. Like sometimes it's our numbness. It might be that part of yourself isn't feeling safe to open up yet. So sometimes it's just like, I can't tell you how many zombies, weird figure, how much psychological riffraff I hugged and pushed through before I started having these super engaging, complex aspects present themselves. So you're on the right path, you're doing it great. You can keep going how you were, or you could tweak it to just summon something more specific, but you got it. Like do you feel excited? Do you feel like, are you excited working with this?
Really excited. Yeah,
Yes.
really, really excited. I'm like, oh yeah, it's happening. But
Yeah.
it's happening. Yeah.
Yeah. And take confidence. And I'd say like take confidence, like remember that the dream is a immediately responsive environment. So we can, it's like it's such a funny thing. When something has gone wrong, we can then expect it to happen again. So for instance, there was a period where I used to call out to my dream and it would just respond to me. And then I did it once and nothing happened. And I woke up. I went back and did it again. And my fear that it wouldn't happen again meant it didn't happen again. And I got stuck in the cycle where because I was expecting the dream not to do it because I had this fear, I was in a self-created thing. So you might also just want to do some rehearsal. Rehearsal is great for this. Like really rehearsing and imagining and expecting a super responsive figure to appear.
Okay.
Even
Like a-
ask for it. My super responsive teenage self that wants to talk to me.
that's what I'm gonna do.
We're gonna be so creative with this stuff, and the dreaming mind's like, I got you, I promise. So
Great.
try that, and then we know how it goes.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for sharing. Oh, all right. Thank you all, everyone. It's so good to see your faces. This week, just so we're all kind of on the same page. No, module 5. So I want you to work with whatever the ordinary awakened trait is that you want to strengthen. Have a clear pathway or practice of how you want to work with it this week. And then also maintaining your high fidelity lucid dreaming practice. And when I say high fidelity, what I mean is when we did our practice reset, we decided to make sure we kept our word or repaired our word. So I don't want you to drop that. If you've been like, ooh, actually last week I really dropped it, start again. High fidelity practice. What are you going to do? Clear intentions, keep your word, repair if you fall off the wagon. Remembering infinite chances, right? You've infinitely compassionate with yourself, but just don't let yourself go for too long without being honest and repairing if there's been a falling off in your practice. If you have been building amazing momentum and you're feeling super cool, I would say, if you have capacity, add another layer this week. So if you've been like, you know what, I've been doing my dream journal every single morning and I've been doing a couple state checks a day and I've been really sticking to that, now add in your inductions every single night again. Or if you've been doing everything like state checks, journal, inductions, do a wake back to bed this week. So add in another layer if you feel like you have momentum going. High fidelity practice. And then next week, we're going to start exploring the cross-dimensional interlap between dreams and other astral liminal spaces. So, so great to see you all. And I look forward to connecting again next week. All right. Ciao, ciao.